When I unlocked the front door of my house after 3 weeks of traveling, the last thing I expected was to find the deadbolt engaged from the inside. I rang the doorbell. Once, twice. I heard laughter on the other side, voices I didn't recognize, the clinking of glasses. I knocked again, this time with my knuckles, harder. The door opened just a few inches, and Jessica's face appeared in the crack, wearing that smile that never quite reached her eyes. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how my trip was. She just said, in a voice so sweet it could cut glass, "Eleanor, thank goodness you're here. We need you to make a grocery run before you come in." I stood there, frozen, my suitcase still in my hand, feeling the exhaustion of the flight turn into something heavier, darker. I tried to push the door open, but she held it firm. "Excuse me?" That was all I could manage. Jessica sighed, as if I were a slow child who couldn't grasp simple instructions. "We have company. 12 people, to be exact. My family flew in from out of state and there isn't enough food. I need you to pick up 10 pounds of prime ribeye, the marbled kind they sell at that high-end butcher shop downtown. You know the one. And a jar of black caviar, the real beluga, not the cheap imitation stuff. Oh, and red wine, at least 4 bottles of the reserve Cabernet." I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. This was my house. The house I bought with my own hands. With every hour of overtime I worked, with every sacrifice I made over 30 years. And now my own daughter-in-law was blocking the door, demanding I go buy groceries for her family as if I were hired help. "Jessica, I just got back from a 3-week trip. I'm exhausted. I want to come into my home." My voice came out firmer than I expected, but she didn't even blink. "Oh, Eleanor, don't be dramatic. It's just a little shopping. My uncles, my cousins, they all came to visit. I can't leave them hungry. You understand, right? You're always so generous." There was something about her tone, something calculated, as if she were reading from a script she had rehearsed. I tried to look past her, into the interior of my own house. I caught glimpses of shadows moving in the dining room, heard the volume of the TV turned up high, smelled something burning in the kitchen. My kitchen. "Where is David?" I asked, scanning the room for my son. I needed him to tell me this was a prank, that his wife had lost her mind for a moment. Jessica stepped aside just enough for me to see the living room window. There he was. My David. My only son. Standing by the glass, hands in his pockets, looking directly at me. And when our eyes met, when I expected him to come running to hug me, to ask why I was standing outside with my suitcase, he just smiled. A small, uncomfortable smile, and then he turned away. He turned his back. Something broke inside me in that moment. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic. It was silent, like when a hairline crack appears in a crystal glass and you know it will never be the same again. "So, are you going or not?" Jessica was still there, blocking the entrance, with an expression of impatience she no longer tried to hide. "Because if not, I don't know what we're going to do. We already have everyone seated, waiting for dinner." I looked at my suitcase. I looked at my front door. I looked at this woman who had entered my life 5 years ago with sweet words and kind gestures, and who was now treating me like a nuisance, an obstacle, someone who had to earn the right to enter her own home. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "Who? My relatives? They got here this morning. But us, well, we've been staying here since you left. It was more comfortable than our apartment, you know. And you didn't think to tell me?" She left the sentence hanging in the air, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to take possession of my home in my absence. I felt the humiliation climbing up my throat, hot and bitter. 66 years old, a lifetime of working, building, giving. And now I was standing on my own doorstep, being treated like a stranger. "Give me the full list," I finally said, my voice sounding hollow even to my own ears. Jessica smiled, this time with genuine satisfaction. She pulled out her phone and started rattling things off. 10 pounds of prime ribeye, a 7-ounce jar of black beluga caviar, 4 bottles of reserve Cabernet Sauvignon, imported manchego cheese, prosciutto, Kalamata olives, artisanal sourdough bread, and for dessert, get something special. Surprise us. I calculated mentally. She was talking about at least $600, maybe more. $600 to feed people I didn't even know while they kept me outside my own house. "And afterwards, you'll let me in?" I asked, hating myself for having to ask that question. Of course. Eleanor, your family. Jessica winked at me, as if we shared a fun secret, and closed the door. I stood there, staring at the varnished wood of the door I had chosen myself, listening to the deadbolt slide back into place. I picked up my suitcase and walked toward my car, feeling every step weigh more than the last. I drove through the city streets aimlessly for the first 10 minutes, my hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The tears I had held back in front of Jessica began to fall, silent and burning. I had to stop at a red light, and that's when I saw it, the park where I used to take David when he was little. I parked the car without thinking. I needed air. I needed to remember. I needed to understand how I had arrived at this moment. I walked to the same bench where we used to sit 40 years ago. The wood was more worn now, the green paint peeling, but it was still there, resisting time just as I had resisted everything. I sat down and closed my eyes. I remembered David at 6 years old, running toward me with scraped knees, crying because he had fallen off the swing. I would hug him, clean his wounds, promise him everything would be okay, and I kept my promises. I always kept them. When his father left us, David was 8. One morning, his dad was there, and the next he had disappeared with a woman 20 years younger, leaving only a note on the kitchen table and debts that took me years to pay off. I remember David asking me if he had done something bad, if that was why his dad left. I hugged him so tight that night, I thought we would both break. "No, sweetheart," I whispered. "You are perfect, and I am never going to abandon you, never." And I didn't. I worked double shifts at the hospital for 10 years. Registered nurse by day, cleaning medical offices by night. My hands permanently smelled of disinfectant, and my feet were always swollen. But David never went without. Never. When he turned 15 and told me he wanted to study engineering, I knew we couldn't afford it. But I couldn't tell him no. So I sold the car I had just finished paying off. I took a third job on weekends, caring for an elderly man who could barely remember my name but paid in cash. I watched other parents take their kids on vacations, to fancy restaurants, to concerts. We ate pasta 4 times a week, and our vacations were movie nights at home with stovetop popcorn. But David had his books, his university, his future. I opened my eyes and looked at my hands. These hands that changed so many diapers, that packed thousands of lunches, that signed loans and worked until they bled. 66 years old, and these hands still trembled when I thought about those years. The house. My house. I bought it when David was 25 and had just landed his first job. I saved for 18 years for that down payment. 18 years of saving every penny I could, denying myself treats, walking miles to avoid spending on gas, bringing lunch from home, cutting my own hair in front of the bathroom mirror. I remember the day I signed the deed. The lawyer handed me the keys, and I cried right there, in front of everyone, with no shame. It was mine. Finally, we had something that was ours, something no one could take away. I gave a copy of the keys to David that same afternoon. "It's our house, sweetheart. Yours and mine. Always." He hugged me and promised he would take care of me when I was old, that I would never want for anything, that he would always be there for me just as I was for him. Then came Jessica. He met her at a work conference. She was an event coordinator, always perfectly made up, with flawless nails and clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary. When David introduced her to me, she was charming. She brought me flowers, helped with the dishes, called me Mom Eleanor with that melodious voice that seemed rehearsed. "David is so lucky to have a mother like you," she would say. "So hardworking, so dedicated. I hope to be half as good as you when I have kids." I melted at her words. After so many years alone, after so much sacrifice, finally someone saw everything I had done. Someone appreciated it. When they announced they were getting married, Jessica came to see me alone. She sat in my kitchen with tears in her eyes and took my hands. "Eleanor, I know this is a lot to ask, but my family doesn't have money. My dad is sick, and my mom can barely pay for his meds. I always dreamed of a beautiful wedding, something simple but dignified, you know. But I understand if it's not possible. David and I can just go to the courthouse. It doesn't matter. How could I say no? How could I let my son get married at a courthouse when other families had receptions with hundreds of guests?" I dipped into my savings. $20,000 I had put away for my retirement. $20,000 that turned into an ivory dress with imported lace, a ballroom with crystal chandeliers, a banquet for 150 people, and a honeymoon in Cancun. "You're an angel, Mom Eleanor," Jessica told me, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. "I promise we're going to pay you back. Everything. Down to the last penny." 5 years passed. I never saw a single penny back. But it wasn't just the wedding. Then came the car. David's broke down and he needed one to get to work. I lent him $15,000. "It's a loan, Mom, I swear. I'll pay you back with interest." Then it was the trip to Europe Jessica wanted to take for their anniversary. "Just this once. Mom, we need to reconnect as a couple." $5,000. Then the renovations on their condo. $8,000. Then the new computer David needed to work from home. $3,000. Once I kept an exact count. $51,000 in 5 years, more than I earned in 2 full years of work. And now I was sitting on a park bench, with my suitcase still in the car, having been kicked out of my own house, with a $600 grocery list on my phone. I wiped my tears with the back of my hand and started the car. The premium supermarket where Jessica wanted me to buy the meat was on the other side of town, in the district where people lived who never had to count pennies to make it to the end of the month. I drove on autopilot, feeling the humiliation settle in my chest like a cold stone. The parking lot was full of luxury SUVs that cost more than my house. I grabbed my purse and walked in, the automatic doors opening with a soft whoosh. Inside, everything sparkled. The marble floors reflected the LED lights. Classical music played softly over the speakers, and the aisles smelled of fresh-baked sourdough and cut flowers. I felt out of place with my wrinkled travel clothes, my messy hair, my comfortable worn shoes. A young employee in a crisp uniform smiled and asked if I needed help. I shook my head and walked toward the butcher counter. Behind the glass, the meat was displayed like jewelry. Perfect cuts, marbled with white fat that looked like lace, each piece with a tag indicating the price per pound. I looked for the prime ribeye Jessica had asked for. $40 a pound. 10 pounds, I murmured to myself, doing the math. $400 just for the meat. For people I didn't even know. For people who were sitting in my dining room, using my plates, dirtying my house. The butcher approached, wiping his hands on his white apron. "How can I help you, ma'am?" "I need 10 pounds of this cut," I said, pointing to the marbled meat, my voice sounding mechanical, distant. While he prepared the order, I walked toward the imported goods section. The caviar was in a refrigerated display case, each small jar with prices that made my stomach turn. Authentic beluga black caviar, 7 ounces, $250. I took the jar and held it in my hand. It was so small, so insignificant. $250 for something that would be eaten in minutes, that would disappear into the mouths of strangers who probably wouldn't even truly appreciate it. I kept walking, grabbing things from Jessica's list as if in a trance. Manchego cheese, $40. Prosciutto di Parma, $60. Imported Greek olives, $25. Artisanal bread, $15. 4 bottles of Reserve Cabernet, $200 total. My cart was filling up and my heart was emptying out. I passed the aisle for basic staples, and something made me stop. There was an older woman, maybe my age, comparing prices between 2 brands of rice. She picked up one bag, read the label, put it back on the shelf. She picked up the other, did the same. Her face showed that concentration I knew so well, that mental math you do when every dollar counts. I saw myself 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, always counting, always calculating, always choosing the cheapest option to be able to give the best to David. And now here I was, with $1,200 of luxury food in my cart for people who had slammed the door in my face. I reached the checkout lanes and got in line. In front of me, a young couple laughed while the cashier scanned their items. Champagne, strawberries, imported chocolate. He stole a kiss from her while they waited for the total. She blushed, happy. I remembered when David introduced me to Jessica for the first time, how he looked at her with eyes full of adoration, how she snuggled against him and he held her as if she were the most precious thing in the world. I thought, finally my son has someone who loves him like I love him. Finally, he won't be alone. How wrong I was. "Ma'am?" The cashier was looking at me. It was my turn. I started placing the items on the conveyor belt, one by one, watching the prices add up on the screen. The cashier whistled softly when he scanned the caviar. "Someone's going to have a special dinner tonight," he commented with a friendly smile. "Yes," I replied, my voice emotionless. "Someone." $1,273.42. The total appeared on the screen like a slap in the face. I pulled out my debit card, the same card I had used to pay for David's college, his wedding, his car, all his emergencies and whims. But before I swiped it through the machine, I stopped. My hand hovered in the air, shaking slightly. The cashier waited. The people behind me in line waited. The whole world waited. And I remembered. I remembered the check for $8,000 I gave David 2 years ago for the renovations on his condo. I found the receipt in my purse a few months ago when I was looking for something else. I had stuffed it in my wallet without thinking. The renovations on the apartment he shared with Jessica. New paint, hardwood floors, a remodeled kitchen. I remembered the $5,000 for the trip to Europe. I have the photos they uploaded to social media saved on my phone. Jessica in different dresses every day, Michelin-starred restaurants, hotels facing the Eiffel Tower. While I ate instant ramen for dinner because that month I had overspent helping them. I remembered the $15,000 for the car, a silver sedan that David showed off proudly. He promised me monthly payments. I received 3 payments of $200 and then silence. When I asked him, he said, "Mom, we're tight this month. Next month I'll pay double, I promise." Next month never came. I remembered every loan, every favor, every emergency that turned out to be a disguised luxury. The birthdays where I gave cash in envelopes and they gave me cards bought at the drugstore. The Christmases where I cooked for everyone and they arrived late and left early. The times I invited them to dinner and they canceled last minute, but when they needed something, I was always available. I remembered the deed to my house kept in a safety deposit box at the bank. A deed that had only one name, Eleanor Margaret Davis. Only mine. Because I bought it alone, with my money, with my sweat, with years of my life I will never get back. And now Jessica and David were in that house, with 12 guests, acting as if it were theirs. As if I were the guest. As if I had to ask permission to enter. "Ma'am, are you going to pay?" The cashier was looking at me with concern now. He probably thought I didn't have enough money. But it wasn't that. I had the money. I always had the money when it came to David. I made sure I always had the money. What I didn't have was the dignity to keep doing this. I looked at the cart full of luxuries. I looked at my card. I looked at the waiting cashier. And then I did something I had never done in my entire life. "Excuse me," I said, my voice firmer than it had sounded in hours. I changed my mind. The cashier blinked, confused. "I'm sorry. I changed my mind. I'm not going to buy any of this." I left the cart right there, with all the products Jessica had demanded, and walked out of the supermarket. My legs were trembling, my heart beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. But I kept walking. I crossed the parking lot, got into my car, shut the door. And I sat there, breathing deeply, feeling something inside me begin to shift. It wasn't liberation yet. It was something smaller, more fragile. It was the first spark of rage. Of true rage. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. 6 in the evening. Jessica and her 12 hungry guests would be waiting. David would be looking at his watch, wondering where his obedient mother was with the food they had ordered. But I wasn't going back. Not yet. First, I needed to think. I needed to remember who I was before I became a walking ATM with legs. I searched my purse until I found what I needed. A small brown notebook where I had kept all the receipts, all the vouchers, all the proof of every penny I had lent them over the years. I don't know why I kept them. Maybe a part of me always knew this day would come. I opened the notebook and began to read, page by page. Every number was a memory. Every date was a broken promise. Every total was a piece of my life I had given away, hoping for love in return. $51,300. That was the grand total. More than many people earn in a year. More than I had saved for my retirement. All handed over willingly, lovingly, to a son who now wouldn't defend me when his wife locked the door. I closed the notebook and held it against my chest. I started the car, and drove aimlessly for several minutes. I just needed to move, to get away from that supermarket, and the humiliation I almost accepted as if it were normal. The city streets blurred past the window until, without really planning it, I ended up in front of a small cafe I used to visit years ago, before every penny had to be destined for David, for Jessica, for their endless needs. The sign was still the same. The Gardenia Cafe. I parked and went in. The aroma of freshly ground coffee and cinnamon hit me with a nostalgia that almost made me cry again. I found a table by the window, away from other people, and ordered a simple black coffee. When the waitress brought it, I stared at the dark liquid for a long time. My phone started vibrating. It was David. I looked at the screen without answering. Vibrated once, twice, 3 times. It stopped ringing. 5 seconds later, it started vibrating again. This time, it was Jessica. I didn't answer. A text message came in from David. "Mom, where are you? It's late." Another from Jessica. "Eleanor, people are hungry. How long are you going to be?" I silenced the phone and put it face down on the table. For the first time in 5 years, I was going to do something radical, something revolutionary. I was going to ignore them. I took the brown notebook out of my purse again and placed it next to my coffee cup. I opened it to the first page. There it was, in my careful handwriting. Loan for David's wedding, $20,000. Date, March 15th. Promise of payment, monthly, starting in June. June came and went. July, too. In August, when I finally asked, Jessica hugged me and said, "Oh, Mom, Eleanor, we're so tight getting settled into married life. Give us a few more months, okay? You know we want to pay you." I turned to the next page. Car for David, $15,000. Date, January 8th. Promise of payment, $300 monthly. I received 3 payments. Then, excuses. Insurance went up, Mom. Jessica needed dental work. The washer in the condo broke. Page after page, the story was the same. Money going out, promises coming in, nothing ever returning. But it wasn't just the money that hurt me while reading that notebook. It was the pattern. Every time I needed something, every time I felt lonely or sick or just wanted to spend time with my son, there was always an excuse. "We're busy, Mom. We have plans. Another day." But when they needed something, I had to be available immediately. And I was always there. Always. I remembered last year, when I got sick with a terrible flu. High fever, chills, so weak I could barely get out of bed. I called David to ask if he could swing by the pharmacy and bring me some medicine. "Mom, I'm in the middle of an important meeting. Can't you ask a neighbor?" In the end, I went myself, shaking with fever, driving to the pharmacy because there was no one else. 2 weeks later, Jessica sprained her ankle. It wasn't anything serious, just a mild sprain. They called me at 11 p.m. "Mom, we need you to come over. Jessica is in a lot of pain. She needs someone to be with her while I work tomorrow." I went. I spent 3 days taking care of her, cooking for her, bringing her water, fluffing her pillows. She complained constantly about how slow her recovery was, about how bored she was. Not once did she say thank you. I took a sip of my coffee, now lukewarm. The phone kept vibrating with messages I wasn't reading. I could imagine the chaos at my house. Jessica would be furious, pacing back and forth, cursing my lateness. Her relatives would be impatient, hungry, wondering where the promised food was. And David would be there, probably quiet, not defending me, not wondering why his mother hadn't returned. I opened my purse and took out another thing I had kept for years. My old checkbook, the one I used to write all those checks to David. I flipped through the pages, looking at the stubs where I had recorded every transaction. My handwriting always so careful, noting the date, the amount, the memo line, to help my son. How foolish I had been, how incredibly foolish. But while I looked at those papers, those proofs of my infinite generosity and their constant ingratitude, something began to crystallize in my mind. It wasn't just sadness I was feeling. It wasn't just disappointment. It was clarity. I saw my life with brutal sharpness. I had spent 66 years being useful, being necessary, being the person everyone turned to when they needed something. First, it was my mother, who made me watch my younger siblings while she worked. Then it was David's father, who expected me to work and keep the house spotless. Then it was David himself, my adored son, who learned to see me not as a person with her own needs, but as an inexhaustible resource. And I allowed it all. I allowed it because I confused love with service. Because I thought if I gave enough, if I sacrificed enough, if I made myself small enough and invisible enough, then they would love me. Then they would value me. But real love doesn't slam the door in your face. Real love doesn't make you wait outside your own house, like you're hired help. Real love doesn't use you until you're dry and then discard you when there's nothing left to take. I took out my phone again, and this time I unlocked it. There were 17 missed calls and 32 messages. I read them all, one by one. David, Mom, where are you? Jessica, Eleanor, this is ridiculous. We've been waiting 2 hours. David, Mom, please pick up. Jessica is very upset. Jessica, if you don't get here in 30 minutes, we're going to have to order takeout, and you're going to have to pay for it. An unknown number, probably one of Jessica's relatives. David told us his mother was bringing dinner. What time is she arriving? David, Mom, this is very embarrassing. What am I going to tell Jessica's uncles? Jessica, you are selfish, Eleanor. You knew we had people over and you abandon us like this. I read that last message 3 times. You are selfish. Me, the woman who had given every penny, every hour, every piece of herself. I was the selfish one because I didn't run to spend $1,200 on food for strangers occupying my house without permission. Something broke permanently inside me. But it wasn't something bad. It was like when you break the chains that bind you. It hurts, yes, but afterwards you can move. I opened my banking app on my phone. There was my savings account, the one I had slowly rebuilt after emptying it so many times for David. $32,000. It wasn't much for a woman my age who should be thinking about retirement, but it was something. It was mine. I also had a supplementary card I had given to David 3 years ago for emergencies. The limit was $10,000. I checked the history. Restaurants, clothes, gas, online shopping, everything but emergencies. With hands that no longer shook, I went into the bank's website and froze the supplementary card. Cancelled. Done. Then I opened my transfer app. I used to have an automatic payment of $500 monthly set up to David's account. Something I established 2 years ago when he told me they were really tight with expenses. $500 every month for 2 years. $12,000 leaving my account automatically without me even thinking about it anymore. I canceled the automatic transfer. Deleted. I searched for my lawyer's number in my contacts. Robert Henderson, a man I met when I bought my house. He helped me with all the paperwork. He made sure the deed was only in my name. A good man. Honest. I texted him. Robert, I need to review some legal documents as soon as possible. Do you have time this week? It's urgent. The reply came in 3 minutes. Eleanor, of course. Tomorrow at 10 in my office. Perfect, I'll be there. My phone vibrated with another call from David. This time I answered. Hello. My voice came out calmer than I expected, cold almost, as if I were speaking to a stranger. Mom. Finally. Where the hell are you? David's voice sounded somewhere between relieved and irritated. We've been waiting 3 hours. Jessica is furious and the uncles want to leave. This is very embarrassing. Embarrassing? I repeated, letting the word hang in the air between us. Tell me, David, which part is more embarrassing? That your wife slammed the door of my own house in my face? Or that you stood there, looking at me through the window, doing absolutely nothing? There was a silence. I could hear background voices, forced laughter, the sound of the TV. Mom, don't be dramatic. Jessica was just joking. You know how she is. She likes to make jokes. A joke. I felt a laugh rising in my throat, bitter and harsh. Locking me out and demanding I spend $1,200 on food for her family is a joke. Well, she didn't think it was that much money. And besides, you've always been so generous. We thought you wouldn't mind helping with dinner. You know we can't afford those things right now. Of course you can't, I said, surprising him with my agreement. Because the $15,000 I lent you for the car was spent on other things. Because the $8,000 for the condo renovations went into new furniture I saw in Jessica's photos. Because every penny I've given you disappears like water through fingers and never comes back. Mom, are we starting with that again? We told you we're going to pay you. We just need time. Things are tough for everyone, not just you. You're right, I said. Things are tough. And that's why I just canceled the supplementary credit card you had in my name. I also canceled the automatic transfers of $500 a month. The silence on the other end was absolute. I could imagine him, phone pressed to his ear, processing what I had just said. What? His voice came out like a strangled whisper. You did what? You heard me. And tomorrow I'm going to see my lawyer to review the status of my house. The house that, in case you don't remember, is solely in my name. Mom, wait. You can't do that. We live here. Where are we going to go? That, I said slowly, is an excellent question. One you should have asked yourself before leaving me outside, like a stranger. One Jessica should have asked herself before treating me like her personal employee. You're blowing everything out of proportion. Jessica just wanted dinner to be special for her family. They came from far away. You can't understand that. What I understand, I replied, feeling every word make me stronger, clearer, is that in my own house, there are 12 people I don't know, eating my food, using my things, while I am sitting in a cafe because I was locked out. What I understand is that my son saw me standing outside with my suitcase and just smiled, David, as if it were funny to see me humiliated. I didn't. It wasn't like that. I just thought you were going to come back fast and what? That everything would be fine? That I would swallow the humiliation one more time because I always do? Because I've always been the one who bows down, the one who yields, the one who gives and gives and gives without ever asking for anything in return. You're my mother, he shouted, and for the first time I heard something real in his voice, something beyond irritation. It was fear. Mothers are supposed to help their children. That's what mothers do. You're right, I said, and felt the tears finally begin to fall, not from sadness, but from something like relief. Mothers help their children. Mothers sacrifice. Mothers give everything they have. And I did that, David. I did it for 40 years. I worked until my hands bled. I slept 4 hours a night for a decade so you could have an education. I sold everything of value to give you opportunities I never had. Exactly. But children, I continued, interrupting him, children also have responsibilities. Children should love their mothers. They should respect them. They should defend them when someone treats them badly. And you didn't do any of that today, David. Nothing. Jessica is here, he said suddenly, and I heard the sound of the phone changing hands. Eleanor. Jessica's voice was pure ice. I don't know what's wrong with you, but this is ridiculous. You have my entire family here, starving, waiting. I came from far away, and this welcome is totally disrespectful. Disrespectful? I repeated, almost laughing. You talk to me about disrespect. Yes, me. Because I've always been respectful to you. I've always called you Mom. I've always included you in our lives. You include me when you need money, I said. You include me when you need a free babysitter, or someone to take care of you when you're sick, or someone to pay for your whims. But when it really matters, when I need to be treated with dignity in my own home, you're not there. You're locking the door in my face and demanding I spend more money. You're so dramatic. It was just a dinner. Eleanor, we just wanted a nice dinner. Then pay for it yourself, I answered simply. Order all the caviar and prime ribeye you want. But pay for it with your money, not mine. We don't have money. That's why we asked you. You always have money saved. You can always help us. I have money saved, I said slowly. Because I've been working since I was 14. Because I never buy new clothes. Because I've driven the same car for 12 years. Because I eat pasta 4 times a week so I can save. I don't have money because I'm rich, Jessica. I have money because I kill myself working and never spend on myself. All of it, absolutely all of it, I gave to David. And now to you. Well, that's what families do. They help each other. Families help each other, I corrected. It's a two-way street. But this family only goes one direction. From my bank account to yours. From my time to your needs. From my life to your comforts. If you don't want to help us, just say so, Jessica spat. But don't come crying later that you're alone, that no one visits you. Because if you're going to be like this, selfish and stingy, then we're not interested in your company anyway. Those words should have hurt me. They should have made me back down, apologize, promise I would come back with the food. But instead, I felt something different. I felt freedom. You know what, Jessica? You're right. If my company is only worth it when I come with cash in hand, then I prefer to be alone. I prefer chosen solitude 1,000 times over company that charges me for every second. You're a bitter old woman, Eleanor. No wonder David's dad left you. He was probably sick of your attitude. That did hurt. It was a low blow, calculated to wound me where it hurt most. But it was also clarifying. It showed me exactly who this woman was that I had helped, supported, funded for 5 years. I'm hanging up now, I said, my voice shaking but firm. And I'm going to tell you something very important, Jessica. Listen closely because I'm not going to repeat it. That house you are occupying is mine. Only mine. The deed has only my name. And tomorrow I'm going to talk to my lawyer about the best way to recover my property. So enjoy your stay, because you have exactly 30 days to find another place to live. You can't kick us out. David is your son. David is a 32-year-old grown man with a job and a wife. It's time you learn to live on your own resources. I've done my part, more than done. You squeezed me to the last drop and still wanted more. Well, there is no more, Jessica. The bank of Mom is closed. Permanently. David, your mother has gone crazy. I heard Jessica screaming. There were noises, scuffling, and then David's voice came back on the line. Mom, please. You have to calm down. I know you're tired from the trip. Come home, rest, and tomorrow we'll talk calmly. I'm not going to that house tonight, I said. I'm going to a hotel. A quiet hotel where I can sleep in peace without worrying about someone asking me for something. And tomorrow at 10, I'm going to be at my lawyer's office. I'll send you the legal documents via certified mail. Mom, you're making a huge mistake. You're going to regret this. The only mistake I made, I said, feeling the words spring from a deep place I had kept silenced for too long, was teaching you that it was acceptable to treat me like this. That was my mistake. And yes, I regret it. But I regret that, not this. I hung up before he could respond. I turned off the phone completely. I sat in the cafe, looking at my reflection in the dark window. A 66-year-old woman with messy gray hair, deep dark circles, clothes wrinkled from travel. But there was something different in my eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. There was determination. There was strength. There was, for the first time in a long time, a glimmer of the woman I used to be before I became just Mom, just the one who always helps. I called the waitress and ordered a sandwich and another coffee. I was going to eat. I was going to take my time. And then I was going to look for the nicest hotel I could afford, one with clean sheets and silence, and sleep the whole night without interruptions. For the first time in years, I was going to do something just for me. The hotel I chose wasn't the most luxurious in the city, but it wasn't cheap either. It was one of those discreet places, with a light stone facade and wide windows, where business travelers and couples celebrating quiet anniversaries stay. It cost me $120 a night, and when the receptionist handed me the key card, I felt an automatic pang of guilt. $120 for a night. That's too much. That's a waste. But then I remembered the $1,200 I almost spent on food for strangers. I remembered the $51,000 I gave away over 5 years, and the guilt evaporated. The room was on the 5th floor. When I opened the door, the smell of clean, fresh laundered sheets with lavender softener greeted me. The bed was huge, covered with a cream-colored duvet and fluffy pillows that looked like clouds. There was a small table by the window, overlooking the city lights starting to turn on in the twilight. I left my suitcase by the door and stood there for several minutes, just looking at the room. It was mine. Just mine. No one was going to knock on the door asking for money. No one was going to call with an emergency requiring me to drop everything. No one needed anything from me, at least for tonight. I sat on the bed and the tears began to fall. But this time they weren't tears of humiliation or sadness. They were exhaustion, liberation. Of all the weight I had been carrying for so many years, and finally, for a moment, I could set down on the ground. I cried until there were no more tears left. Then I took off my wrinkled travel clothes and got into the shower. The hot water fell over me like forgiveness, washing away not just sweat and fatigue, but also something deeper. washing away years of telling myself that I didn't matter, that my needs could wait, that my happiness was less important than everyone else's. I stayed under the water until it turned cool. Then I put on the fluffy white bathrobe the hotel provided, wrapped my hair in a towel, and sat on the bed again. I turned on my phone. Big mistake. 47 new messages. 23 missed calls. I took a deep breath and started reading. David had written a long message, full of words like disappointed and can't believe and after everything we've shared. It ended with, Jessica is crying. Her uncles left angry. Everyone thinks you're a terrible person. Is this what you wanted? To humiliate us. Jessica had sent shorter but more poisonous messages. Selfish, stingy, bad mother. Wish David had never introduced me to you. You ruin everything. There were messages from unknown numbers. Probably Jessica's relatives. What kind of mother-in-law treats family like that? Your son deserves better. You should be ashamed. I read them all. Every word designed to make me feel guilty, to make me back down, to make me run back with apologies and money in hand. But something strange happened while I read them. Instead of feeling guilt, I felt clarity. Because no one, not a single one of those messages, asked how I was. No one asked if I got somewhere safe. No one asked if I needed anything. No one apologized for slamming the door of my own house in my face. Everything was about them. Their shame, their annoyance, their comfort. I deleted all the messages, one by one. Then I blocked the unknown numbers. David and Jessica's I left active, but I silenced the notifications. My phone vibrated with an incoming call, a name I hadn't seen in weeks. Susan. Susan had been my friend for 40 years. We met when we both worked at the same hospital, her in administration and me as a nurse. We shared countless night shifts, watery vending machine coffees, life stories. She was there when David's father left. She was there when I graduated nursing with honors. She was there for every important moment, but in recent years I had seen her less. I was always busy with David, with Jessica, with their endless needs. Susan would invite me to dinner, to the movies, to get coffee, and I always had an excuse. David needs me to watch the dogs. Jessica isn't feeling well, and I need to be available. I have to help them with some shopping. I answered the call. Eleanor. Her voice sounded worried. Honey, are you okay? I've been calling you for weeks. Susan. Her name came out like a sigh. I don't know how I am. Where are you? What happened? And I told her everything. From the moment I arrived at my house and found the door locked, to Jessica's demand, to David's smile from the window, to my decision not to buy the food, to the call where I told them they had 30 days to leave. Susan listened in silence. When I finished, there was a long pause. Thank God, she finally said. What? Thank God you finally reacted, Eleanor. I've been waiting for this moment for 5 years. I was struck dumb. Forgive me for saying it like that, Susan continued, her voice soft but firm. But you've been a shadow of yourself since Jessica entered David's life. You turned into a walking ATM. You stopped doing things you loved. You stopped seeing your friends. You stopped living your life because you were too busy funding theirs. I just wanted to help my son, I whispered. I know, honey, I know. And there is a huge difference between helping and letting people use you. David isn't a child, Eleanor. He's a grown man who should be taking care of himself, not expecting his 66-year-old mother to solve every problem. But I'm his mother, they say. They say mothers are supposed to love their children. And you do. But love doesn't mean destroying yourself. Love doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. And what they did to you today was pure mistreatment, Eleanor. They locked you out of your own house, your house. I felt the tears welling up again, but this time was different. It was relief to hear someone, at least one person in the world, see what I saw. That I wasn't crazy, that I wasn't being selfish or dramatic. I don't know what to do now, I admitted. Tomorrow I'm seeing the lawyer, but after that, I don't know. I feel lost. Where are you now? A hotel. The Grand Continental. Perfect. Give me 30 minutes. I'm coming over. Susan, you don't have to. Susan interrupted me with that voice that accepted no arguments. You are my friend, my sister of the heart, and you've been fighting alone for too long. Let me be there for you. Please. We hung up and I looked at the phone. 30 minutes later, exactly as promised, there was a knock on my door. I opened it and there was Susan, 68 years old but looking vibrant as ever, with her short auburn-dyed hair, red-framed glasses, and a warm smile that reached her eyes. She was carrying 2 bags. "I brought reinforcements," she announced, walking in without waiting for an invitation. From one bag she pulled out a bottle of red wine, 2 fancy plastic cups, cheese, crackers, and chocolate. From the other bag she pulled out my old photo album. "How do you have that?" I asked, surprised. "I went to your house 3 months ago to return a book you lent me. David wasn't home, but Jessica was. She made me wait at the door like a solicitor, didn't even invite me in. When she finally brought the book, I saw your photo album in a box in the garage like it was trash. I took it and was going to return it to you, but I never found the right moment. Until now." She opened the album on the bed. There they were. Photos of me at 25, just graduated as a nurse, smiling with a pride I had almost forgotten. Photos of baby David, just the 2 of us against the world. Photos of my trips before everything became about sacrifice, when I still did things for myself. "Look at this photo," Susan said, pointing to an image where I appeared on a beach, wearing a bright orange dress, hair loose in the wind, laughing. "This was you, happy, free, living." "I was young then," I said. "You were 40 in this photo. Eleanor, you weren't young. You were free, and you can be that again." We sat on the bed, drinking wine, eating cheese, looking at photos of a life I had almost forgotten. Susan told me about her granddaughter, her yoga class, a trip she was planning to Sedona and Sedona. "Come with me," she said suddenly. "To Sedona. In 2 months. A full week. Sunday art. Galleries. Just us girls." "I can't," I replied automatically. "It's too expensive and besides." "And besides what?" "David needs you? Jessica has an emergency? Eleanor, you just told them they have 30 days to get out of your house. Are you going to backslide now?" I looked at the wine in my glass, the scattered photos, the window overlooking a city that suddenly seemed full of possibilities instead of obligations. "I'm not going to backslide," I said slowly, tasting the words in my mouth. "I'm not going to backslide." Susan smiled and clinked her glass against mine. "That's the spirit, my friend." I woke up at 6 in the morning, without needing an alarm. The light of dawn entered softly through the cream-colored curtains of the hotel, and for a moment I didn't remember where I was. Then everything rushed back like a wave. The locked door, the humiliation, my decision, the phone call, Susan, the wine, the photos of a woman I no longer recognized but wanted to be again. I got up and went to the window. The city was waking up slowly, the first rays of sun painting the buildings gold. I felt strange, not exactly happy but not sad either. It was something in between, something it took me several minutes to identify. It was peace, a fragile, new peace, but real. Susan had stayed until midnight, telling stories that made me laugh for the first time in weeks. She reminded me of moments I had forgotten, versions of myself I had buried under layers of responsibility and sacrifice. Before leaving, she hugged me tight and whispered, "Today, your new life starts, Eleanor. Don't let anyone take it away again." I showered, dressed in clean clothes from my suitcase, and went down to breakfast at the hotel restaurant. I ordered scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, toast, and coffee. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, no rush, no guilt. Around me, other people were eating breakfast, reading the newspaper, conversing quietly. Normal life, quiet life, drama-free life. When I finished, I turned on my phone. More messages, of course. This time I decided to read them while drinking my second cup of coffee, with a calmness that surprised even myself. David had texted at 2 a.m. "Mom, I need to talk. This is ridiculous. You're my mother and you can't kick us out like this. Please be reasonable." Jessica had texted at 3 a.m. "Eleanor, if you continue with this insanity, you're going to lose your son forever. Is that what you want? Dying alone because you were stubborn." I deleted both messages without replying. Then I opened my email and wrote to my boss at the hospital. "Dear Dr. Stevens, I am writing to inform you that I need to take the 3 weeks of accumulated vacation time I have pending. I know it is short notice, but it is an urgent, personal situation. I can start my absence from tomorrow if possible. I appreciate your understanding. Sent. 3 weeks. 21 days. I hadn't taken a real vacation in 5 years. There was always a reason not to. David needed help with something. Jessica was organizing something. The dogs needed watching, had to be available just in case. Just in case. My whole life had been an eternal just in case. At 9:30, I left the hotel. The lawyer's office, Robert Henderson, was a 20-minute drive. I arrived 10 minutes early and waited in the small reception area, looking at the green plants in the corners, the framed diplomas on the walls. Eleanor. Robert appeared at his office door in his impeccable gray suit and kind smile. Come in, please. His office was cozy, with shelves full of law books and photos of his family. I sat opposite his dark wooden desk and took a deep breath. Tell me what's happening, he said, with that direct but gentle manner he had. I told him everything. This time it was easier. The words flowed more smoothly. The closed door, the demands, the money lent, never returned. My decision to reclaim my house and my life. Robert listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and steepled his hands under his chin. Eleanor, legally this is very clear. The house is solely in your name. You never added David or Jessica as co-owners. That means you have every right to ask them to leave. But, I asked, because I could hear the but in his voice. But emotionally, it's going to be complicated. David is your son. If you go ahead with this, the relationship is going to change, maybe permanently. Are you prepared for that? Robert, I said slowly. The relationship already changed. It changed when my daughter-in-law slammed the door in my face and my son did nothing. It changed when I realized I'm only worth something to them when I come with money. It changed when I understood that I've been paying for love for 5 years and that is not real love. He nodded, understandingly. Okay, then here is what we are going to do. I will draft a formal eviction notice. 30 days is generous, but legal. I will send the document via certified mail today. I will also include a detailed letter requiring that any property in the house that is not theirs must remain intact. And if they refuse to leave, then, after the 30 days, we can proceed with a formal eviction through the courts. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. Most people, when they see official legal documents, understand the situation is serious. There's one other thing, I said, taking my brown notebook out of my purse. I want you to see this. These are all the loans I've given them over 5 years. $51,300 in total. Is there any way to recover any of that? Robert took the notebook and flipped through it, his expression becoming more serious with every page. Do you have proof of the bank transfers? Of most of them? Yes. Was any of these loans documented officially? Promissory notes? I shook my head. They were family loans. I trusted their word. That makes it more complicated, but not impossible. We can send a formal letter demanding repayment. If they refuse, we could consider a civil lawsuit, but that would be a long and costly process. Honestly, Eleanor, the question is it worth it? Or is it better to just cut your losses and move on? I thought about it. $51,000. It was a lot of money. Money I could use for my retirement, for travel, to live better. But it was also money I would probably never see back, no matter how many lawyers I hired. Send the letter anyway, I decided. Not because I expect to recover the money, but because I need it on the record. I need them to see, in black and white, how much I have given. Even if they never pay it, I want them to know. Perfect. I will do it. We spent the next hour reviewing details, signing documents, establishing timelines. When I finally walked out of Robert's office, with copies of everything in my bag, I felt like I had crossed a bridge. There was no turning back now. I had taken legal action against my own son. But instead of feeling guilt, I felt something else. I felt that finally, someone was defending me, and that someone was me. I drove aimlessly for a while, needing to process everything. I passed familiar places in the city. The park where I took David. The hospital where I worked for decades. The school where he studied. Memories on every corner. Without planning it, I ended up in front of a small art gallery I had wanted to visit for years. I always passed by it, always promised myself I'd go in someday when I had time. But I never had time because there was always something more important. something more urgent, someone else who needed something. I parked and went in. The gallery was small but beautiful, with white walls and natural light flooding through wide windows. There were paintings by local artists, ceramic sculptures, black and white photography. I moved slowly among the pieces, no rush, just looking, feeling, letting the art speak to me. I stopped in front of a painting that stole my breath. It was an older woman, maybe my age, sitting in a chair by an open window. She was looking out, toward a landscape of mountains and open sky. Her posture was relaxed, her expression serene. But what impacted me most was what was on the floor next to her, a closed suitcase. The plaque said, "Departure, oil on canvas." I stood looking at it for long minutes, feeling something move in my chest. This woman in the painting, with her suitcase ready, looking toward an unknown but possible future, was me, or could be me. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" A soft voice startled me. It was the gallery owner, a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back in a bun. "Yes," I replied, "it's exactly beautiful. The artist painted it after getting divorced at 65. She said it was her self-portrait of the first day of the rest of her life." "How much is it?" I asked before I could stop myself. $800. $800. Part of me screamed that it was too much, that it was a waste, that money could be used for something more practical. But another part, a new part, just beginning to awaken, said, "Buy it. You deserve something beautiful. You deserve to remember this moment." "I'll take it," I said. The painting came with a certificate of authenticity and a protective frame. I carried it to the car carefully, like I was carrying something sacred, and placed it in the back seat. $800. The first time in years I spent that amount of money on something just for me, something not necessary, something I couldn't justify with practical logic, and I felt wonderfully free. I drove back to the hotel with that feeling bubbling in my chest. I set up the painting in the room, leaning it against the wall where I could see it from the bed. The woman with the suitcase, looking toward the horizon. She didn't seem like a stranger anymore. She seemed like a companion, someone who understood. My phone rang. It was a number from the hospital. I answered. "Eleanor, this is Dr. Stevens. I received your email. Of course you can take your vacation. In fact, I was worried. You haven't taken a real break in years. Is everything okay?" His genuine concern almost made me cry. "Yes, doctor. I just need time for myself, to resolve some personal matters. Take all the time you need. You even have an additional week accumulated if you need it. You are one of our best nurses. Eleanor, take care of yourself." I hung up feeling warm inside. There were people who valued me. Not for my money, not for what I could give them, but for who I was. Over the next few days, I did something revolutionary. Nothing. Well, not exactly nothing. But nothing productive, nothing that benefited anyone other than me. I stayed at the hotel. I slept in. I ordered room service. I read the book I bought 3 years ago and never opened. I watched old movies on TV. I took long baths. I looked out the window for hours without feeling like I was wasting time. Susan came to visit every afternoon. She brought coffee, pastries, magazines, conversation. She told me about her life, her projects, her plans, and I began, slowly, to remember what it was like to have a conversation where everything didn't revolve around problems I needed to solve or money I needed to give. On the 4th day, Robert called. "Eleanor, the documents were delivered. David signed the receipt yesterday." My stomach tightened. And nothing yet. Legally, they have 26 remaining days. Now we just wait. Thanks, Robert. I knew it would come. The final confrontation. David wasn't going to accept this without a fight. But every day that passed, every hour, I dedicated to myself. I felt stronger, clearer, more sure of my decision. On the 5th day, I decided to go back to my house. Not to stay, not to backslide on my decision, but to pick up some things I needed. Extra clothes, important documents, personal items. And yes, also to face whatever I found there. I arrived mid-afternoon, when I knew David would be at work. My hand trembled slightly as I put the key in the lock. The door opened. The house smelled different, like food I didn't recognize, like cheap perfume, like something vaguely stale. I walked in slowly, like an intruder in my own home. The mess hit me immediately. Dirty dishes piled in the sink, some with dried food stuck to them from days ago. The living room was full of glasses, empty wine bottles, fast food wrappers. My decorative pillows, the ones I bought with such care, were thrown on the floor, stained. The beige carpet, which cost me 2 months of savings, had a huge dark stain, probably red wine. I walked to the kitchen. My pots were on the stove, with burnt food remains. The oven had grease splattered everywhere. The refrigerator was full of things I didn't buy. Expensive alcohol, imported cheeses, fine meats, all the food Jessica wanted me to buy that day. They had probably ordered delivery and charged to the credit card I just canceled. I went up the stairs to my room. The door was closed. I opened it and the air left my lungs. It wasn't my room. My bed was there, yes, but covered with sheets I didn't recognize, wine-colored with black lace that I would never buy. My vanity was full of Jessica's cosmetics, expensive jars of anti-wrinkle creams and designer perfumes. My closet was open and half my clothes had been moved, jammed to one side to make space for Jessica's dresses. They had moved into my room, into my most intimate, personal space, invaded it as if they had the right. I felt the rage rise, hot and pure. But I also felt something else, determination cold as ice. I pulled a large suitcase out of the closet and began to pack. My clothes. My personal photos I found thrown in a box in the corner. My jewelry, including my grandmother's ring, I kept in a velvet box. My important documents from the safe only I knew how to open. David's baby photo album that was under the bed, covered in dust. I worked fast, methodically. When I finished with my room, I went down to the living room and took the few things I really cared about. A vase my mother gave me, a framed photo of my parents, an antique book of poetry I had inherited. I was carrying the second suitcase to the car when I heard a car pull into the driveway. My heart raced. It was David. He got out of the car and saw me there, with my suitcases, emptying the house. His expression cycled through several emotions: surprise, anger, something that might have been pain. "What are you doing?" he asked, walking toward me. "Collecting my things," I replied, keeping my voice firm. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You can't be serious about kicking us out." "Very serious, David. The lawyer sent you the papers. You have 26 days. It's my house, too. I grew up here." "No," I corrected. "You grew up here. But the house is mine. I bought it. I pay the taxes. I pay the maintenance. You just occupy it. I'm your son." "I know," I said, and my voice cracked a little despite my efforts to keep it steady. "Believe me, I know. That's why it hurts so much, David. Because you are my son, and yet you slammed the door in my face. Because you are my son, and you asked me to spend $1,200 on food for strangers while I waited outside like hired help. Jessica didn't mean it like that. She just what?" I interrupted him. "She just was joking? She just didn't think? She just assumed I would obey like I always do? Tell me, David, which of those options makes this okay?" He stayed silent, hands in pockets, looking at the ground. "And you," I continued, feeling all the words I had saved for years beginning to come out. "You were there. You saw me standing outside with my suitcase. You saw me through the window, and you just smiled and turned your back. You didn't defend me. You didn't tell your wife she was crossing the line. You didn't open the door. You just left me there." "I didn't know what to do," he whispered. "Jessica was so excited about her family's visit, I didn't want to ruin it." "So you decided to ruin me," I said simply. "You decided that keeping Jessica happy was more important than defending your mother. And that decision, son, has consequences. Mom, please, I promise things are going to change. I'm going to talk to Jessica. We're going to respect you more. We're going to start paying you what we owe you. Just give us another chance." I looked at him. My son, my only son. The baby I carried for 9 months, fed, raised alone, protected from everything. The boy who promised me he would always take care of me. The man who was now standing in front of me, making promises we both knew he wouldn't keep. "David," I said softly, "you have asked me for another chance 27 times in 5 years. I know because I counted them. Every time you promised to pay me and didn't. Every time you said things would change and they didn't. Every time you assured me you would include me more and then left me out. 27 times I gave you another chance. And all 27 times, nothing changed. This time will be different. No, I said, carrying my last suitcase to the car. This time I am the one who will be different. I'm no longer going to be the mother who accepts crumbs of love while serving a banquet of sacrifice. I'm no longer going to be the ATM you use when you need it. I'm no longer going to be the person who makes herself small so you can feel big. So what? You're going to abandon me? You're going to stop being my mother? I'm never going to stop being your mother, I replied, and the tears finally began to fall. But I'm going to start being Eleanor too. I'm going to start being a whole person, not just your mother. And if that means we have to be apart for a while, then so be it. I closed the trunk of the car and turned to look at him one last time. You have 26 days, David. Find a place, pack your things, and leave my house as you found it. I drove back to the hotel with tears falling freely, not tears of regret. They were tears of liberation, of grief for the relationship I thought I had with my son that never really existed. They were tears for the mother I was and the woman I lost in the process. When I got to the room, I sat on the bed for a long time, simply breathing. The painting of the woman with the suitcase watched me from the wall, offering silent company. She understood. She too had to choose between staying in a place that destroyed her or leaving toward the unknown. The following days were strange. David called me several times, but I didn't answer. Jessica sent furious messages that I blocked without fully reading. According to Robert, they had started looking for an apartment, which was a good sign. But they had also hired their own lawyer, trying to argue that they had a right to stay because they had contributed to the maintenance of the house. Robert assured me they had no case, but it still caused stress. Susan became my anchor. She came every day, sometimes just to sit with me in silence, other times to drag me out of the hotel to walk, to drink coffee, to remind me there was life beyond this pain. One afternoon, 2 weeks after everything, Susan arrived with a laptop under her arm and a mysterious smile. "Remember I invited you to Sedona?" she asked, opening the computer. "Susan, I don't know if I'm ready to." "Shh, just look." She showed me the screen. She had found a small boutique resort in Sedona, Arizona, with rooms that looked out onto the brilliant red rocks. There were pottery classes, vortex tours, art markets. 2 weeks, you and me. And look at this. She opened another tab. After Sedona, we can fly to Maui, Hawaii. 4 days. Beach. Sunday, absolute rest. I looked at the photos. Golden sand beaches, turquoise waves, orange and pink sunsets. Women my age walking barefoot on the shore, smiling, free. It could be me. It could be that woman. "How much does it cost?" I asked, although part of me had already decided it didn't matter. $3,000 per person, all inclusive. Flights, hotels, meals, tours. $3,000. A fraction of what I had spent on David and Jessica over the years. A fraction of what I almost spent on a single dinner for Jessica's relatives. "Do it," I said. "Book for both of us." Susan smiled so widely her eyes almost disappeared in the wrinkles. "Really? Really? It's time I did something crazy, don't you think?" That night, after Susan left, I sat in front of the bathroom mirror. I really looked at myself, perhaps for the first time in years. I saw the wrinkles around my eyes, the expression lines on my forehead, the hair more gray than brown. I saw the tiredness in my gaze, but I also saw something new. I saw strength. I saw a woman who had survived, who had made a difficult decision, who had chosen her own dignity over the comfort of being needed. "Hello, Eleanor," I said to my reflection. "I've missed you." The last 10 days before the eviction deadline expired were tense. Robert kept me informed. David and Jessica had found an apartment and were packing. There had been some attempts at negotiation, offers to pay minimal rent to stay, promises to repay the borrowed money in monthly installments. We rejected everything. The rules were clear. 30 days to vacate completely. On day 29, I received a message from David. It was late at night, almost midnight. "Mom, we're leaving tomorrow. I know you're angry, and you have the right. I just want you to know I'm sorry. Sorry for failing you. Sorry for not defending you. Sorry for taking your love for granted. I don't expect you to forgive me now, but I hope someday we can talk. I love you, even though I haven't shown it well. I read the message several times. There was sincerity in those words, a genuine pain. Part of me, the maternal part that would never completely disappear, wanted to call him, tell him everything was okay, that we could try again. But the wiser part of me, the part that had grown during these weeks, knew it wasn't time yet. The wounds were too fresh, the patterns too ingrained. If I went back now, everything would return to how it was before. I wrote back, David, I accept your apology, but apologies need to be accompanied by real change. When you are ready for a relationship of mutual respect, where we both give and receive, where we both value each other, then we can talk. Until then, I wish you the best. You will always be my son, and I will always love you. But now I need to love myself too. I pressed send before I could regret it. On day 30, I went to my house with Robert and Susan. I needed witnesses, moral support, and also legal protection in case things got difficult. But when we arrived, the house was empty. David and Jessica were gone. I walked in slowly, preparing myself for the disaster. And yes, there was work to do. The walls had scuffs, some furniture had scratches, the stained carpet would need to be replaced. But it was empty. It was mine again. I walked through every room, feeling how the space breathed differently without their presence. In the kitchen, I found a note on the table, written in David's handwriting. Mom, we left the keys in the mailbox. We cleaned the best we could. I know it's not enough to make up for everything, but it's a start. Jessica wants you to know she's sorry too, even though it's hard for her to say it directly. We moved to an apartment on the north side. When you want to talk, here is the address. Underneath was a scribbled address and a new phone number. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. I didn't throw it away. Maybe one day I would use it. Maybe not. But having it was enough for now. Are you okay? Susan asked, putting her hand on my shoulder. Yes, I said, surprised to realize it was true. I'm okay. I spent the next week cleaning and repairing my house. I hired people to clean the carpets, to paint the walls, to repair the small damages. I bought new sheets for my bed, soft yellow curtains for the living room, plants for the garden. I was reclaiming my space, making it mine in a way it had never been completely mine before. The night before my trip to Sedona, I sat in my newly restored living room, sipping chamomile tea, looking at the painting of the woman with the suitcase that now hung on my wall. I had spent almost $5,000 repairing the house, $3,000 on the trip, $800 on the painting, $8,800 in total. Money that 3 months ago would have seemed impossible to spend on myself. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt alive. My phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. I opened it cautiously. Grandma Eleanor, this is Chloe. I know Dad and you are fighting. I just wanted you to know he told me what happened, and I think you were right. Sometimes true love means setting boundaries. Hope to see you soon. Love you. Chloe, David's 23-year-old daughter from his first marriage, who lived with her mother in another city. I had seen her few times in the last few years, always brief and rushed meetings, but I remembered a smart, sensitive girl with eyes that saw more than she said. I replied, Chloe, thanks for writing. It means more than you imagine. When I get back from my trip, I would love to see you. We can grab coffee and talk for real. Love you too. That night I slept in my own house for the first time in a month. In my own bed, with my own sheets, in my own space. And I slept deeply, without startles, without anxiety, without that constant weight on my chest that I had carried for years. The next morning, Susan arrived early to take me to the airport. I loaded my suitcase into her car, the same suitcase I had arrived with that day when everything changed, and I looked at my house one last time before leaving. Ready? Susan asked. Ready, I replied. At the airport, while we waited for our flight, Susan passed me a small package wrapped in gold paper. Open it, she said with a smile. Inside was a brown leather journal with my name engraved on the cover. So you can write your new story, she read the attached card. I hugged Susan, this friend who never abandoned me, who waited patiently for me to remember my own worth. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. You don't have to thank me, she replied. You just have to be happy. That is enough. When they announced our flight, I walked toward the boarding gate with a sensation of lightness I hadn't experienced in decades. I was 66 years old. For many, that would mean life was already mostly written, that the great adventures were over. But I knew different. I knew that sometimes life really begins when you have the courage to let go of what is killing you. I got on the plane, found my seat by the window, and while we took off, I watched the city getting smaller and smaller below us. Somewhere down there was David, learning to live without my constant financial support. Somewhere was Jessica, facing the consequences of her actions. Somewhere was the house I saved, the past I let go, the woman I was. But here, at 30,000 feet, heading to Sedona with my best friend, with 3 weeks of vacation ahead and a blank journal waiting to be filled, here was me, Eleanor. Not just mom, not just nurse, not just the one who always helps. Just Eleanor. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. I closed my eyes and smiled. Today I don't need permission to live, I murmured to myself. And I discovered that chosen solitude is infinitely better than company that charges me dearly for the privilege of existing. The sun shone through the plane window, warm on my face, like a blessing, like a new beginning, like the promise that it is never too late to choose yourself, to reclaim your life, to remember that you too deserve love, respect, and freedom. I opened the journal Susan had given me and wrote the first line of my new story. Today, I begin again. And this time, I choose me.